Hey there, Tony Heitzma here again from Shades Express. This video is how to mount a shade on the outside of the window. We determined that if you're buying this shade, you have either the flat walls or you don't have the 3/4 of an inch of space required to do an inside mount. So pretty much what you're going to have here is obviously your shade. We have your mounting brackets, screws for the mounting brackets, and then we are going to use these extenders on the cord anchors, and I'll talk more about that when we get to that point. So this particular shade here that we have is, excuse me there, this is just a top-down shade. It's not the top-down, bottom-up that you see in the background there. This is just a top-down. So it pretty much just, you can pull it down from the top and you can stop it in the middle of the window or wherever you want. But yeah, and again, I can explain that. I guess I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. What you want to do is, we're going to start off, again, you want to have some sort of a screwdriver, a striker lighter, cigarette lighter, and a pair of scissors. But we're going to go ahead and on this particular shade, if you watched the measuring videos, we determined that we were going to use the flat part of the outer, or I'm sorry, yeah, or the inside part of the trim here. And we went to the, again, you got to have the most flat part of the trim so everything fits properly. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, you can this is pre-drilled, but you just go ahead and take a 7/64 drill bit, zip zip, there are your installation holes. A lot of times I go over zip zip, and there you go, you're ready to go. So this is the bracket that we use. It's nice because it's used for the inside mount and the outside mount. Since this is the outside mount, we're gonna go ahead and do it that way. The holes are ready to go. You just hold your bracket up. There's one. There's two. It shifted there a little bit, but that's okay. It's no problem, because once the shade's in there, you don't even, on a top down, you don't even see any part of the bracket whatsoever. There's that one. And get this one anchored down, maybe. There you go. All right. So what you want to do is, to determine the front of the shade, the size of the shade, we always just write it with marker down so you know that this is a 21 by 28 shade. The head rail and the bottom rail. The head rail here, the top, has a groove that's going to fit in the tooth of the bracket. So what you want to do is, to do that, you go ahead and you tilt the rail like so. I don't know if you can see that, but see how it's kind of locked in there. It's kind of nice because you don't see that that particular shot on the video of an inside mount, but that's what it's going to look like. We measured this where it was right in the center of the outer edge of the trim there, and you go ahead and once you hear that snap, okay, you can barely hear it, but it's ready to go. It's snapped in. So the shade is just going to hang down like that. Okay. What we're going to do now is we want to determine the tension of the shade. The anchors have a little knot, and the anchor slides down to the bottom of the knot. That knot is there because we preset the tension of the shade for you at the shop, but a lot of times you have to make the adjustment when you're installing the shade because we don't know exactly if it's, if the measurement's off a little bit or anything. But it's kind of nice because the length of the shade, there's room for error, so to speak, because it can be adjusted. So what you want to do is just kind of press the shade down. And you want to, again, I'm sorry, we went ahead and pre-drilled the holes. You just want to go to the bottom of the window there, and here we're going on the outside, so there's where we pre-drill our hole and where the anchor is going to be. But you press the shade down, and you want the anchor to be right relatively close to that hole, which this one is. So we're good to go. What you want to do at this point is you're going to go ahead, I'm a lefty, so I always start on the right side because I guess you say I live in a backwards world. We're going to go ahead, we're going to lift the anchor out of the way of the knot, and we're going to go ahead and you want to cut that knot. The reason that we leave this extra is because if the shade is too tight, you can loosen the knot and stretch it down, creating more strain. It's going to loosen the shade up, but we've already determined that we're pretty much right on the money here. You're going to go ahead and you just want to cut the tip of that off. Go ahead, don't burn your fingers, but you want to just torch the end of the where you made your cut, because that's going to prevent the cording from fraying. Now with an outside mount, what we're going to do here is this little extender cap, okay, looks just like this, and you want to go ahead and this is, you want the little part up here is going to be at the top, okay, and we're going to take the anchor, the bottom of the anchor, and we're going to go ahead and just snap that on, okay, so that's what it looks like for an outside mount. You take your 1.5 inch screw and go ahead and get that set up. Again, the hole's pre-drilled, but pre-drill your hole. And what you want to do on an outside mount is you want the string to go ahead and be on the outside of the anchor. So here we're on the outside of the anchor and not on the inside. So you want it to be kind of where the string is out of the way, if you will. So that side is done. What you want to do next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to push the shade up, because what you want is you don't want the shade to do this on its own, okay? You want the shade to stay up nice and taut. You don't want to overdo it, because what happens is then it becomes too tricky, almost impossible to move the shade. But we've preset it now. Actually, I got it, it feels just, it's a little bit tight, okay, when I'm pushing it. And that's kind of nice because I can show you how to adjust that tension. It would work, but for me and when I install them personally, that's a little bit too tight. So instead of tightening the shade by moving the anchor up and making a new knot, we're going to loosen the shade. So therefore we're going to untie the knot and slide it down just a little bit. I just like the shades to be able to where it barely, you know, it barely, I'm sorry, I can't think here. Okay, so now once we have made the adjustment by loosening up the shade, we want the shade to barely stay up on its own. You don't, again, I just can't stress it enough. You don't want it real tight because it just doesn't operate right. You're probably not going to like that. You just want it to be enough tension for the shade to stay up on its own and not do that on its own. So we've reached that point. We're going to slide the anchor out of the way to get to the knot so we can cut off the extra string. Actually, you don't have to cut this off, but I do because it's a cleaner look. But I mean, what you would get then in that case is you would just have a string here dangling down. But I just go ahead and I just leave a little bit, enough to burn the edge on, okay? The hole's pre-drilled. We're going to go ahead and take the extender cap and snap it into the anchor, like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and take my 1.5 inch screw, get that set in my gun here. It's a magnetic bit, but doesn't seem to want to work. And go ahead and anchor it down. Again, now on the right side, we kept the string to the right. On the left side, we're going to go and we're going to put the string where it's on the left side of the anchor. Like so. All right. So again, this is a top-down shade. It is not the top-down, bottom-up shade. It's nice and tight where we want it. It's staying up on its own. And as you can see here, we just went, it's kind of nice because with the shade being all the way down like that, if it was in your room, you are still able, the way that it's mounted, you're still able to see the trim. If you watch the measuring videos on the outside, we talked about that you could run it along the outside edge if you wanted to. I personally, recommend to my customers just doing it right on the inside there because it does show off your woodwork. So that's pretty much it for an outside mounted shade installation from Shades Express.